So unmute and start video. Record at the bottom middle. Okay. Record on cloud or this computer?
Recording in progress.
Good to go? Okay. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:59, technically, I guess. And it is City Council regular meeting. It is Monday, October 2nd. Get everybody to silence your cell phones and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hogan, can we take the roll?
Councilmember Burke. Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Holland.
Present.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Alderman.
Here.
Everyone is accounted for. So the mayor is out sick tonight, and I am filling in. So if you have any questions, I will do my best to try to help you, but I'm not in the day-to-day operations, but I can defer some of those questions over to city staff over here. So we don't have presentations on there, so we had a last-minute ad here. It's my fault. I didn't send it off earlier. We have the Woodland Youth Football and Cheer that would like to come up and speak about their program and the raffle that they have going right now to try to help fund their organization.
Hi, my name is Alicia Smith. I'm one of the cheer coaches with Woodland Youth Football and Cheer, and I have a few cheerleaders and a couple of football players that are here to sell raffle tickets. And this year we are doing a fundraiser for the added cost due to the levee failure. We are paying outrageous fees to use the fields. Middle school sports were cut, and so we extended our program to include 7th and 8th grade football. Cheer for 7th and 8th has always been included. So we've had to add a lot of equipment, more insurance, a lot more games, more coaches, which everybody that is coaching or is involved is a volunteer. So, but yeah, I will let these girls come up and do a cheer. And if you guys have any questions, just let us know. Face this way?
Yeah.
Face this way. Okay.
Face your audience.
Don't move forward a little bit. Okay. Rowdy, ready?
Okay. Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y. Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Last time.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Can you guys do... Why don't you guys do Woodland is our town? Ready? Okay, ready? Woodland is our town. Ready?
Okay. Woodland is a town. Beavers is a team. We're gonna rock with the black and gold and the green. Woodland is a town. Beavers is a team. We're gonna rock with the black and gold and the green.
Last time.
Woodland is a town. Beavers is a team. We're gonna rock with the black and gold and the green.
Love it. You guys good? Do you guys want to do one more?
Yeah.
You want to do firecracker?
No, yes. Can I do that one?
You want to do that one? Okay.
Can we jump our palms though?
Yeah, this one requires crowd participation. Okay. Hey, all you Beaver fans, come on and clap your hands. Ready?
Okay. Hey,
You Beaver fans, come on and clap your hands. Now that you've got the beat, come on and stomp your feet. You've got the groove, come on, let's really move. Go Beavers. All right. You good? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And raffle tickets are $5 if anybody is interested tonight.
I'll take some.
Okay, okay, okay.
You better get it quick. JJ doesn't have his money out very often. You better get it.
JJ won last year. Yeah.
Okay.
You got some more? Who gets the money? You got some more tickets?
You will put your name and phone number on the stubs.
I don't know. Mom, what's it? Mom, what's it?
4 tickets.
4 tickets.
Evan, I need 4 tickets.
Write your name on it. Here, buddy. Let me take the staple out.
Right here. 5 tickets. 5 tickets. 25.
So can you give her 5 tickets? So give her 3. I'll give her 2 more.
And then,
Guys.
was that 2 for Terry? Was that 2 or 4? You gave him a 20.
I
yeah,
got
give
2
him
and
20.
he got 2.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll give you mine. Your
Really
name
derailed
and phone
everything.
number.
Sorry, guys.
Here.
it's okay. When I do the meeting, it normally goes a lot quicker than will.
You need the tiny pieces.
They give you skinny spaces here to sign this stuff.
Oh, no. I'm good.
Which I only have 3. And I don't know.
Tracy has more.
I think a 10. I think a 10.
Yeah.
We gave him a 20.
I give you.
I don't have that many rocks.
Hey, Evan, give your mom the money.
Okay. We're done up here.
She not getting any tickets sold?
If we are going to divvy it up between the kids that are here.
Yeah.
Go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come here. You got to bring me a ticket. Come here.
Ella. Right here. Look.
Ella.
Look at me. Evan, back up. Ella.
Are you scared to go back there? Yes. Well, okay, if you Venmo me, I can get it to the appropriate person, because I don't know off the top of my head who. What are you gonna win? So he's gonna the gentleman. Perfect. Fire away. Okay.
What's that?
We did.
I don't know. Do we want to keep going now at this point? Okay. So we'll restart the meeting here, and we'll let this continue on. Thank you. I
guys.
appreciate
That
it.
was fun.
And really nice job doing the cheer, ladies. They did push-ups too? Nice. So we'll move on to citizen communication for items not on the agenda. If I have anybody in the, well, let me call up here first. We'll do that. So I got Pat Simodel. Okay. So if you'd like to state your name.
Pat Samadell,
Okay.
and I have initiatives for 6 things that are on the ballot, and I need to have these in by December 18th, so I have lots of time yet, but time goes by pretty quick. So I took the liberty and laid out a whole, there's 6 initiatives here, and I took the liberty of laying them out on the back table. So if you want to, you just go sign up, please, if you're a registered voter, and get that in there for me, and that'll help me out a lot. So I'm going to collect a lot more yet.
Okay. So the initiatives will be out on the back counter for people who want to sign them?
They're out in the hallway, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll move on to John. I'm going to butcher this. Kurt Kenwisher?
Yep. Good evening. When we had the workshop on the marijuana dispensary several weeks ago, I didn't speak at that time because there was a lot of other people ahead of me. But I want to share some of my concerns and the things I've been a part of. We moved here 9 years ago from Milwaukee, Oregon, and we attended a church in Oregon City, Oregon. Since that time, Oregon City has allowed marijuana dispensaries in that town. It started off as 1. It is now Pot City. There is 10 dispensaries on Malala Avenue and surrounding areas. The reason I bring this up is if you decide to open the door on the marijuana dispensaries in this town, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you don't know that, and I don't know that. And they could say, oh, there's the place down on Davidson Avenue, right across from City Hall. Let's open one up there. What are you going to do? Think about it. Okay. Another thing is, so I urge you not to go through with, to keep the moratorium. Whether you know it or not, 4 miles up the road at A&A, they opened a dispensary. My thing is, if the people in Woodland want to buy pot, they can go 4 miles up the road and get it. And there's no young people that are even around that area. If there ever was a perfect location for it, it's there. So you need to really think about these things. The last thing I want to bring up is, this is silly to even put it on the ballot. You're going to spend $40,000 for a pot shop? There's a lot of other items in this town that need to be fixed, infrastructure-wise and otherwise, that would benefit all the citizens of this community. Yes.
I don't think we've sent it to the ballot yet. I think that's still a
No,
discussion.
I know.
So
I know that, but you were talking about it. There
Yeah.
was discussion about it.
yeah, it will
about
take
that.
council approval to send it to the ballot.
So where are you going to get the money for that? You're going to take money away from something else? Think about it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Move on to Rick Pettit. Last names are the hardest.
I think I'm the only one that can pronounce it right anyway, so don't worry.
How do you pronounce it?
Pettit.
Pettit?
If you got a dog, pet it. My name's Rick Pettit. I've owned Remnant Farms Feed since 2005. My lawyer recommended that I reach out to the city council before moving on to the next level. I'd like to read a chunk of the Fifth Amendment. Nor shall any person be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. My business was heavily impacted by the choices the city of Woodland made surrounding the West Scott Road construction project. I had to lay off 50% of my workforce, 2 people, and I had to delay meeting payroll in September till the 20th of September before I could get it done because of the financial impacts to my store. Estimated loss, August 15,000, September 20,000, and the project's still going. I'm estimating for another week, probably lose 5,000 in October for a total of $40,000 in loss to my income. The total road closure versus the 1 lane at a time closure was the main issue that caused it. It shut off the 3 primary routes to my store for quite a while. The alternative detour they gave was very confusing, and a lot of my customers told me that they gave up and went home. Also, the signage was very confusing. There was a sign on Sherman Way that was in the same spot during the closure, and then once the road opened, it was still there with a new message. But if you didn't drive clear up to it, you thought that the road was still closed. It was explained to me that Woodland's policy now is to do total road closures, especially for projects like the Scott Avenue one. But it's the same type of construction that was done on Sherman Way in front of the big businesses that they did about 10 years ago, that they did 1 lane at a time. I was told by the Public Works Director that I was the only one complaining about loss, but she was at a loss to realize that I'm the only retail venture on that road. Everybody else either had alternative ways to get away from out of their parking lot, or they can make do with what they got, but I had to have customers get to my store. I wasn't going to talk for a long time, but I attempted to work out these issues with the Public Works Director, but was met with condescension, and no willingness to assist or shoulder any blame. I found out later that the city policy that they teach all these people is to not take any blame for anything. So that explains that. Her excuses for what happened are all a bunch of, well, I won't swear, but yeah, they were a joke. I have people in the industry, and I have people in my industry that I can bring in if anybody's interested, and they can explain to you about each one of her excuses, why it doesn't hold water. I'm asking the City Council to instruct city officials to cooperate with and fulfill my request for redress of my grievances instead of just telling me to go away. I've been here a long time. I worked hard to stay in business, and I don't need the city putting me out of business. And then I'd like to close with a verse from Proverbs 28:15. Like a roaring lion and a charging bear is a wicked ruler over poor people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petit. Pettit. Gosh, I cannot get that right. Mr. Pettit. Yes. Council address it. Go ahead.
Mr. Pettit, we talked about your situation in committee today, and is he aware of the paperwork that you were talking about?
Mr. Alderman, could you turn your mic?
Yes. Has he been?
So, has anybody at City Hall talked to you about finding it?
Well, since I talked to the project, the Public Works Manager, no one ever mentioned it to me. I found out through the grapevine there's a form I need to fill out, but before I could get there to fill it out, the meeting came up, so I figured I'd just
Okay.
get here first, and then in the next couple of days, I'll get that form and fill it out.
Okay, please get that, because that'll help you out tremendously.
Okay.
That's your path forward, so, and Mr. Boyce can
I-
probably
I-
help you with
I
that.
can help you. Yeah, it's an insurance claim form, and I'll have it at the front desk waiting for you.
Okay, I'll probably, I'm out of town tomorrow, but I'll probably stop in Wednesday.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Mr. Belial, Planters Days.
Yes, Planners Days, we're already getting ready for that this year. The theme contest is available at planners-days.com, and also there's flyers around town that you can scan. It'll take you right to that page, so you can put in your entry for a theme that we might choose, and if we choose your theme this year, you'll get $100, and that theme will be on all of our Planners Days material. Following the theme, we'll have our art contest, and so the art contest follows whatever the theme is, and that'll be distributed to all the kids in the school. And then hopefully we'll get some princesses shortly, we should have some princesses here within the next couple months. Next meeting is October 17th at the VFW, 6 p.m. We'd love to have your participation there. We're trying to get a lumberjack show going this year. Some people wanted that. Of course, to make that happen, a group has to take that on and own that, administer it, make it happen, hopefully raise some funds with it. But I've got the information. We're getting more information. So maybe somebody will take that on. I'd like to see it myself too. That's all. Any questions?
When do the princess forms come out?
Those come out, I believe, sometime in November. Yeah, I wrote it down, but I didn't bring my notes. So, but yeah, Planners Days is moving forward, and we're excited. This is our 102nd year. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Belial. Jean Shaw, Miss Shaw. We got. Is it Jean Shaw? Just guess. There you go, Miss Shaw.
This is stuff I do not like to do, believe me. But I am very concerned about you guys representing the city of Woodland. This thing that Mr. Burke said nay to was the Civic Center, and you guys passed it right away. He said he had not even read it, and you guys all said nothing. I don't know if you read it or not, but why do we need a Civic Center in Woodland? We need a lot more done before a Civic Center, believe me. And I don't think you're representing the people of Woodland. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Miss Shaw. Miss Smith? Mrs. Smith? Smith is easy.
Okay, Maggie Smith. I am concerned about the traffic on Gun Club Road. The amount of traffic on there is like approximately 900 vehicles, and the most has been 1,500. I know of somebody that has a trail cam, and they have taken the numbers. And also, my concern is it's 25 miles an hour. My husband and I were coming down Gun Club on our way to home, and we have had in 2 different instances people passing us on while we're trying to make a left-hand turn. They passed us on the left-hand side, and while we were trying to make the left, they didn't give us enough time. They just zoomed like that, and fortunately my husband slammed on the brakes so we didn't have a collision. And the other time was they passed on the right-hand side, and so we followed one of them to where they lived and kind of told them, you're not being safe. So nobody pays any attention to the 25-mile-an-hour limit. So is there any way, I've seen other places in Hazeldale, they've even got it in Yakult where they've got these bumps. Because they're speed bumps. I don't know what you can do, but somebody's gonna get killed.
I think a
And-
big part of that issue with that road is it's so wide also.
Yes.
If you want to lower traffic speed, narrow the roads down. Bumps, it just gives them a ramp to jump, it
Yes,
seems like.
And also, well, yeah, but also it is a wide road, granted, but they, you wouldn't think so because everybody's parked on either side of the road, so really, it's not, it's wide, but
Yeah.
not enough of that. So I'd really appreciate it if you get your heads together and do something about it. And
We
also,
can-
I agree with Mrs. Shaw about the Civic Center and you guys not reading. How can, isn't there a law or something on the books that you're supposed to read what you pass right away? And so-
Sorry, I'm not allowed to talk.
Okay, well,
We can move that to the public works or public safety agenda for gun club. And do we have a speed sign?
We do.
Do we have a like a
Yes.
speed radar sign that? Well, I think we have like a radar thing that we might be able to put out there. I think we've done that in the past.
Speed trailer.
Yeah. Is that something we could address to them about patrolling the road a little bit more?
We just have a problem everywhere.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to items not on the agenda for tonight? Seeing none, is there anybody online that would like to speak to items not on the agenda tonight? See a couple chats on here. Okay. So at this point, we'll move on to the agenda approval with making sure we're suspending the council rules.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
First by, with the addendum.
Oh, with the, and modify the rules.
Okay. And then second with the rules? Okay. Motion by Councilmember Round, seconded by Councilmember Burke. You take the roll, Ms. Hogan?
Councilmember Alderman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
We'll move to reports of city council. Does anybody have anything tonight they would like to?
We had a really great event down at the park for the Women's Wellness Clinic, and it was fun. Made hot dogs and hamburgers and raised funds and what all. It was a fun afternoon, and I think Aaron,
I did. I won one of the bids.
Yeah, I love it. It was great. And thank you for that donation. That was
Absolutely.
great.
Councilmember Rounds?
I attended the Umpqua after hours at the Umpqua Bank that the chamber put on last Thursday. That was a fun event.
Nice.
Very nice.
That is formerly the Columbia Bank.
That was formerly Columbia
Yes.
Bank, yes.
I also attended that too.
I forgot about it.
We know. There was more food for us.
Anybody have anything else? Okay. Move on to reports of standing committees, public safety.
We didn't meet, but our sergeant has left, became a lieutenant at the Battleground Police Station. And so I guess we have a position going to be open soon. Our 2 trainees are in training now, so you might see them hopefully in good terms. If not, see how good they do. They're under training. That's all we got to report.
The next meeting is on November 6th at 6 p.m. here. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Burke. Move on to Public Works.
That's me. We met at 5:36. I'm just gonna pick off some of the important ones. They've the water treatment plant replaced 2 bad setters. They installed 2 new water services for folks, replaced 5 bad meters since last month. They had 20 rereads. Last month they had over 70 high water reads because people were watering their yards. Normal. Sewer department, they had to vac out lift station 6 due to a grease spill. Folks putting shortening in the drains is not good. It's kind of expensive to fix that. They've started distributing some information for folks to freeze their grease and then throw it away rather than put it down the drains. Grease is a major problem in the collection system. Something to note, Bob Fowler's retired this month. His last day will be on Halloween. So if you know him, he's put in a lot of years making our city wonderful, and you can stop by. Wish him well in his retirement. Some things that'll not make people happy is streets. So west of Downriver is fully paved. Downriver to Pacific will be closed for the next few weeks to through traffic. So if we could give the road workers a little bit of grace. So they're putting in sidewalks and curbing and such, and it's concrete and it has to cure. So they have to cut it off, do a section, let it cure for a couple of days, and then move on. So it seems like it's taking forever, but if you want it to last for the next 30 years, they kind of have to let it cure properly. The curb painting is completed for the year. They are installing miscellaneous street stuff is over on Lake Shore. They're installing the final conduit and working with the PUD to get the new lighting over there on those sidewalks. Ridgefield gave us a flatbed attachment for our truck, and they gave it to us because we're poor. So, sorry. Done some, they've done some, our public works people have done some minor repairs here around the police department, the building that you're in. At the parks department, you'll notice, the parks, they're not gonna irrigate for the rest of the year because now we've hit our rainy season. Over at Gorg Park, there's a new boat ramp that is in and open. And, Make a Difference Day is coming up quickly, so if you know of a group or if you are so moved to help folks in your community, we can connect you with our Public Works Director so you can volunteer, and if you know somebody in your neighborhood that maybe needs some help around their yard, maybe they can't necessarily do some weeding or whatever and they need some help, that's something that Ms. Coleman can facilitate, so send a group of volunteers to your neighborhood to help.
The date?
What is the date for that?
23rd, was it?
Is it on our other, Make a Difference Day, October 28th.
28th.
So, but yeah, you have to call Public Works to kind of throw your hat in that you want to volunteer, or if you know somebody in your neighborhood that needs some help. And then we concluded our meeting at 6:32.
So you have to sign up to volunteer or just show up?
I believe, I mean, I would think you could just show
You
up.
should
Yeah.
show up.
I typically just show up and they always accept me, so.
And put you to work. Give you a yellow vest and send
Yes.
you on your way.
They're not gonna turn away free help.
Yeah. Councilmember Burke.
I think it was last meeting, somebody complained about their bill being the same thing, so we were kind of worried about whether they were reading the meters. So I went home and looked at our bill, and I noticed it was the same price for 6 months. After going to Public Works, I found out that we were in the tier plan, and I was running in tier 4 or 5, I think it was, and that bill would remain the same. If you're just using 5 tiers of water, you're gonna pay the same thing every month. If if you're watering plants and stuff like that, of course, it's gonna go high. But, so it may not, that they are reading your meters, but you're staying in that tier, especially a couple like me. You know, my wife, and we stay in 4 or 5. So they're probably reading your meters.
So you had a really consistent
Yeah.
water meter reads, is what it
Yeah.
sounds like?
They were $161 a month.
Okay.
So something to think about.
Thank you, Councilmember Burke.
See me on the side.
Reports of advisory committee, or the next Public Works meeting, sorry, is November 6th
At 6.
at 6 p.m. We'll move on to reports of advisory committees. Does anybody have anything?
Is anybody on an advisory committee? We're Rotary.
Actually, I'm on the downtown revitalization, but we haven't had meetings. so
Okay. Move on
I have
to
nothing to report.
reports of city officers. Pete?
Right, so I'll jump in on the mayor's report there too. At the last meeting, City Council asked us to put together some more information about special elections. So the next special election is going to be February 13th, I believe. I made a call up to the county, requested information about the cost. I was told an election can cost between $50,000 to $90,000 to put on, and the cost is distributed to whatever entity puts a ballot measure up. So far, they don't have any resolutions from entities to do so, but they've had a call from the Longview School District and the Woodland School District. When they divide the costs for the election, it's by number of voters in each jurisdiction. So if Longview does get on the ballot, they most likely would take the brunt of the cost. If City Council wants something on that election, the date to pass a resolution and do all the paperwork, it has to happen by December 15th. So we were going to ask City Council tonight and see if there's consensus. Would you like staff to put together a ballot measure that could be debated at a future meeting? So I'm just looking for yes, put the work in, or no.
I said no. No.
I'd
I
be
say
a
no.
solid, I'd be no against that.
I am not a fan of frivolously spending money. So,
I say yes.
I don't see
Okay.
consensus at this point.
I don't see consensus.
Okay, staff will wait for instruction from council as far as which way to move this. Moving on to my report, before you have a copy of the preliminary budget for 2024. You'll get some of the more pretty graphs and things as we move forward through the budget process. I did forget to put the budget calendar in there, but I'll have it to you tomorrow. So for the new council members, we'll start meeting every Monday at 7 p.m. until we complete the budget. Basically, we'll be trying to get you comfortable with what's in there. We can make any changes it deems necessary, and we'll start the process. So there's some light reading there for you.
Is that going to start next Monday?
Next
Mr.
Monday
Boyd?
at 7
Okay.
p.m.
Okay.
Yes.
It says here the 16th. 16th council meeting, next month.
that's our regular.
That's
Yeah, I
our-
know, but I mean, it doesn't have upcoming event, it's not there.
Well,
He just
yeah.
said he forgot to
That's-
put it on there.
So anyway, it will start next Monday.
The 9th, right?
I don't have a
Yes.
calendar in front of me.
October
but
9th.
So
yep,
that's
the
Columbus
9th.
Day. Are you open on the 9th?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the first one would be Tuesday.
Okay.
The 10th?
My apologies.
Okay. Tuesday the 10th. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Hey,
So, so we'll get started, and when we have room on regular council agendas, we'll also have a workshop for budget on there.
Does council want to do it the 10th? It sounds like there might be some conflicts for people on that Tuesday.
It's just me, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out.
Anybody else? We're good? Okay. We'll stick with Tuesday.
Oh. I stand corrected. We are open Monday, so we can do it Monday, not Tuesday. My
That
apologies.
is one of your closed holidays.
Okay,
Right.
so we are gonna do it Monday.
Back to the 9th.
My apology. Okay, and then I also wanted to mention the open house for the comp plan. So that's October 5th, correct, Travis? And 6 to 9 p.m. in this room. So we're hoping to get public input on the comp plan. So please spread the word. That's my report.
So one of the comments is for this Make a Difference Day is they're very short of volunteers right now. So please pass the word and try to get some more people signing up. Lilac Gardens was asking for help also, and they're very short of volunteers to try to get help for them as well. So if you guys could pass the word and try to get people, I don't know if maybe we can do some sort of post or something on the Facebook pages and try to get some sort of support.
The high school usually does it, don't they?
They no longer require service hours,
Oh,
so
they don't?
they don't
Nope.
aren't going to have as many high schoolers.
Oh,
The only thing
really?
that requires it is National Honor Society still. They did
Yeah.
away with it at the end of the year last year.
Yeah, the food bank is really low on help because of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. I drag my 8-year-old out every year. He's a help. Okay. Sorry, Pete, I cut you off. Is that
That's it.
everything okay? Let me regroup where I'm at here. Apologize.
Chief's report? Or
Chief? I thought Chief was going to be here tonight, but
this one's.
He's, Chief, no report.
Frank,
This
do you
is-
have anything? Travis, do you have anything? No? I'm sure we'll.
be here about 8 o'clock.
8
This,
o'clock?
this one,
Maybe.
what's in our attachment though is the fire department.
The fire department? Okay. Well, Chief might come in later. He said he was going to try to make it, so we'll move on. Okay, let's see
We should have a county commissioner's report. He's here.
Sorry, moving down the list here. I don't do this every day, so bear with me. Move on to consent items. Do we need to? Are we doing comments? Sorry, I apologize. So we'll take public comments on consent items. If anybody in the lobby has any comments for consent items, now's the time to come up and speak. Seeing none. If anybody has comments for consent items online, now's the time to speak. Seeing none.
Motion to approve consent items?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Dowdy, seconded by Councilmember Hall. Ms. Hogan, can we take the roll?
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman.
Aye.
All right. Motion has carried. Move on to action item C. The CDID number 2 Diking District MOU. We'll move to public comments. If anybody has any, can't talk. Anybody in the lobby has any public comments on action item C, now's the time. Seeing nobody, we'll move on to anybody online for action item C. Seeing none, chair can take a motion.
Make a motion to approve action item C, Diking District Number 2 MOU.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rounds, seconded by Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Rounds.
Well, it's nice that the city, the school, the port, and the Diking District are all getting together and trying to work out a plan for what's going to be happening. So I think it's a good thing.
Agreed.
Councilmember Hall.
Same. Agreed.
Anything further? Seeing none.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Motion has carried. Moving on to action item D, authorize mayor to sign memorandum of agreement between the City of Woodland Police Department and the Cowlitz County Sheriff for use of the Cowlitz County Law Enforcement Shooting Range. Now's the time. Anybody in the lobby would like to come up and make public comments on action item D? Now is your chance. Seeing none. Anybody online would like to make comments on action item D? Seeing none. Chair can take a motion at this point.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Dowdy, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Dowdy.
I just think it's a good thing for our police department to be able to use this and work with the Cowlitz County.
Councilmember Rounds.
It makes sense. They don't have to travel as far. It saves money in the whole bit. So it is a good thing.
Anything further?
It's just nice to see the attachments there.
Councilmember Alderman.
I just have questions on the funding out of it, the cost of it. Is it gonna come out of the city or is it come out of the police budget?
Please.
So it does come out of the police department expenditures that are part of the general fund.
It comes out of the general fund, not their money they budgeted for them?
That is.
Well, it's
He's answering it.
yeah, the police department is part of the general fund, and there are expenditure appropriations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody, any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Hogan, can we take the roll?
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman.
Aye.
You
Motion.
didn't call Dowdy.
Oh, Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
Sorry.
Motion has carried. Moving on to action item E, ordinance number 1544, loan forgiveness for Fund 320 sidewalks. First reading. Let me get my brain to work here again. Take public comments. Now's your chance for action item E if you have any public comments from the lobby. Seeing none. Online, if there's any public comments for action item E, now's your chance. Seeing none. Chair can take a
Make
motion
a
now.
motion to approve action item E, ordinance 1544, loan forgiveness for Fund 320 sidewalks.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rounds, seconded by Councilmember Holland. Councilmember Rounds.
It's basically just some housekeeping to close those accounts that, and get them off the books. Because those projects are done, so.
Councilmember Holland.
That, to reiterate, $11
Yes.
and 17 cents is what we're moving so that we can clean up our books.
Okay. Anybody have anything further? Seeing none. Ms. Hogan, can we take the roll?
Councilmember Alderman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
We got everybody this time? Motion carries. We'll move on to action item F, ordinance number 1545, close funds 324, WashDOT exit 21 feasibility and Fund 329 Davison BNSF Water Main Crossing, first reading. I'll take public comments from the lobby on action item F. Seeing none, if anybody online would like to speak towards action item F, now is your opportunity. Everybody is really talkative out here today. I appreciate that. Move on to nobody online to speak towards action item F. We will move on to take a motion on action
Move
item
to
F.
approve.
Second.
Motion seconded by Councilmember Burke. Councilmember Holland.
This is another bookkeeping thing, just so folks who do not have this directly in front of them. 218,907.69 will be transferred to the street fund, and 68,701.72 will be transferred to 001 current expense to clean up our books for the year.
Councilmember Burke.
I agree.
Anybody else have anything further? Seeing none, Ms. Hogan, can we take a roll?
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman.
Aye.
Motion has carried, and at this time we can move into workshop. Do we want to take a 5-minute break or 8-minute break and start at 8 p.m.?
Please.
Okay, so we will move back into workshop at 8 p.m. We'll take about a 7-8 minute break here, and we'll start our workshop. All right, time is 8 p.m. and we are moving into a workshop. First item on the agenda for the workshop is ordinance number 1542, transportation impact fee. Are you kicking that off, Travis?
Yep.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. My name is Community Development Director for the City of Woodland. The first item that you have before you today went through the Planning Commission last week. This isn't the one that went through the Planning Commission. So we were hoping to have, after we updated the Parks and Rec impact fee, we were hoping to update the traffic or transportation impact fees. And we are working with FCS to do a rate study because we noticed some quirks in both of our code and the calculations from when it was adopted back in 2012. And because we don't have the calculations done themselves from the consultant, what you have before you as a workshop today is 2 code changes, 2 clarifications from the existing code. And specifically, they are the clarification for the definition of the city's capital facilities plan and the city's transportation plan. So the ordinance refers to specific documents or has language that implies that those are specific documents. And if you look in the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan says that capital facilities plans, there's a capital facilities chapter, but that chapter includes elements like the master sewer plan, the master water plan, the Parks and Rec plan, and the schools plan and the transportation plan. So it recognizes that yes, this is an adopted document, but the council will update additional plans and do additional work, and you update the transportation improvement program every year, and that's your 6-year funding for transportation projects. But the code actually refers to like a 2008 document that actually quotes like a 1996 document. So the problem with our ordinance is it implies that you're still using a 1997 transportation document, which anybody who's driven in town may believe that to absolutely be true, but it is not. You do transportation decisions on a yearly basis based upon the money you expect to get for the next 6 years. So the ordinance that you have in your packet is just clarifying that we're eliminating the dates and we're referring to a larger philosophy of the city's capital facilities and transportation plan changes over time as the city continues to change over time. So the language, the actual proposed language is in your packet. If you have any questions or you need any clarifications, I'd be more than happy to dive into that.
Anybody have any questions or concerns about what Travis has went over? No? Okay.
I do not. For a change, I have nothing to say. Shocked, I know.
Well. Okay, move on to workshop item H.
So this should show number 1, Pete.
What? So the WLD Woodland 2023-001, retooling our code, minor code changes review. Travis?
Yes.
Mr. Goddard, are you going to speak to that?
Yes.
Okay.
So this was at the Planning Commission at the last meeting last week, and they actually broke it down to make 2 recommendations. And the first one is in regards to changes to the fire code. And so I know that there are citizens here who want to talk about that, but I'll go through my presentation real quick. So Essentially, the request is the city has a code section that is more restrictive than the International Fire Code, and essentially the city has a requirement for buildings over 5,000 square feet to have fire sprinklers. Next slide. So the request that was actually made, and that is there should be an exception to that requirement for sprinklers, and it should be based upon essentially two factors. One is that the building itself be made out of non-combustible materials, and that if that building houses F2 or F3 occupancies. So the next slide, to break that down for you, those are occupancy ratings under the building code, and F stands for factory, and S stands for storage. And the number 2 represents low hazard materials. So in this case, gypsum or wallboard material. If you are processing it or storing it in a building that doesn't burn, the argument should be stuff that doesn't burn in a building that doesn't burn shouldn't have to have fire sprinklers in it. And there has been a couple discussions before you before and in front of the Planning Commission, and it was an argument between, under those circumstances, the fire marshal had raised concerns that forklifts have fuel, employees and those kind of things also go into those buildings. So there is an opportunity for people to be harmed by fire. So it's not just about the building and the materials. And so the Planning Commission recommended rejection of the requested code change. Are there any questions about that?
I don't know if I have a question, but I'm not happy about it.
Can I speak?
Was I supposed to allow public comment before or after these ones? I probably messed that one up.
Each end away.
So yeah, we can do public comment. So we'll do public comment after, I think. See, everybody's got an opportunity to speak up here. Is everybody okay at this point?
No, I'm with Carol on that. I think that a building that's generally safe because it's not burnable and the material in it is not burnable, they shouldn't have to go to the same expense of fire protection, sprinklers, etc., for something, you know.
That is non-combustible.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me, so that's my thinking.
Okay.
So,
Councilmember Holland.
sort of to kind of piggyback on what doesn't make sense. So, for instance, if you have a giant roll-up door, why do you need an exit sign above it? I don't know. Clearly it's an exit, right? Like, I've never understood that kind of stuff. But, so in this particular instance, though, I think you're gonna tell us, you mentioned forklifts, and they can explode, like if they're propane, I'm sure. Left in there long enough, they could explode in a room that, full of material that doesn't burn. So was that kind of the logic behind it? Was just that because somebody might be in there running a propane forklift and something might spark a fire?
Or there might be processing equipment that could catch on fire. So even though the building itself may not be at danger, there may be other conditions that are a danger within the building. And this is an argument that the fire chief made to you a couple weeks ago, and they will be here when the ordinance actually comes before you for voting. So,
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councilmember Alderman.
I remember it was the fire captain, it was the captain that came in, was speaking to us. And I remember one of the things he brought up is what they're planning, what a person's building the building and what they're using it for then. And they're not required to put it in there now because it's non-combustible. What happens when times change and or they have to redo their business or something changes and all of a sudden there is combustible things in there and they're not planning it, then they gotta go, it's much easier to just put it now as they're doing it. And also too, he had talked about the cost of the insurance and property taxes and stuff like that. He made some pretty valid points on those, or not changing the code. just wanted to refresh that a little bit.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we can move on to some public comments regarding action item H. You can come up and you can state your name or whatever you want to call yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Brady Well. I work for Columbia River Carbonates, but mostly I'm here because I just see this as something that needs to help out a small community fix their fire code. So, big picture, if you go to the IBC and IFC International Fire Code, they have many pages that lead you through what defines whether or not you need a fire sprinkler building. Has to do with what you're storing, what you're using. A lot of those are the pathway that you run through. There's charts, tables, blah, blah, blah. It is very well thought out material. What we have here is where Woodland Fire Code just has this blanket, anything over 5,000 square foot gets sprinkled. I think for the most part it's not that big of an impact to most people unless they are somebody like us who specifically, if you go through the IBC and the IFC, there is a carve out for somebody who is F2 or S2 occupancy, basically meaning that there's very few things that actually qualify for that. Calcium carbonate and gypsum manufacturing are one that are specifically listed in the fire code. It gives us the option, or the there's a, as long as you're 60 foot from, as long as your buildings are 60 foot from your side yard, meaning from your property line, and they're all one level, so we don't have, you know, stacks levels, multi-level buildings or anything like that, that you don't have to sprinkle. Unlimited area without sprinklers. We have, gosh, going back since the 80s, long before I worked for them, we have requested and been granted this exception in the fire code at least a dozen times. This last go round for a building that we're trying to install, the fire chief has concerns with granting an exception again, insurance like you said, but the way I wrote the change to the code, it would only add F2, S2 occupancy to the exceptions that are already listed in it. And so pretty much it would only be us that it would be excluding from this blanket 5,000 square foot statement. If you ask me personally, I've got 20 years of consulting engineering before I came to work for CRC, and I've been here 12 years. I've got a lot of years working in industry. You know, La Center, Ridgefield have something similar on their books to this, and that you see that in small towns because it's simpler. But Longview, Cowlitz County, if I'm just across the street in Cowlitz County, outside of the city district, this wouldn't be on there. They go by the IBC and the IFC for something like this. As far as insurance premiums go, this carve-out caveat, buildings classified as F2 or S2, non-combustible construction materials, basically that's saying only if you meet this very narrow criteria, just follow the IBC, not this blanket 5,000 square foot statement. Few can qualify for that. We've been granted that many times, and it doesn't really, the insurance catch on that is a company like that fits that qualification doesn't, we're not insured by Geico or anything like that. You know, major international insurance companies for factory, mutual, things like that are who insure us, and they actually don't just write a policy without coming and looking at your fire code or whatever. They actually come tour your plant, make recommendations, and if they recommended it, we would do it because it would make an impact to our bottom line. So let me see here. I think part of it is reluctance to change. Change is scary. There's unforeseen changes that might come out of doing this, but mostly I think it would help other businesses. If you ask me personally, based on my many years of experience, I think it's silly to have a one paragraph chunk of code that overwrites pages and pages of code that have been written by experts who do nothing but work on that for their entire career. Yeah, I think that covers my basic points on this and what my arguments for the change would be. Trying to help out. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Will. Anybody else in the lobby that would like to come up and speak on fire code? And since I missed allowing people to come speak on the other ordinance, 1542, at the end of this. I'll give people an opportunity to come up and speak to that as well. Move back to council. Any further discussion from council? Sorry, I missed online. Is there anybody online that would like to speak towards fire code on workshop action item H? Seeing none.
I'd also offer if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. I got one comment to make myself. Do they go do a fire inspection every year on buildings to walk through the fire marshal and?
That is one of the services that they offer, and I do believe that they are currently doing that for all the businesses in the community.
So if they did do a code change on it, they would, if that building becomes vacant, another person moves in, I would expect that they would catch that and say, hey, this occupancy is not zoned or classified for this. You have to do this and this in order to have occupancy on that.
I would say in my experience previously, I have done projects where plants that have been shut down have been retrofit. And when you go to retrofit the plant, they have to submit to the city their planned occupancies. So if Columbia River Carbonates went out of business tomorrow and XYZ Milling Company wanted to take over those buildings, they would have to submit and meet the same requirements or make modifications to be code compliant.
Yeah, it would just be whether or not the business is following the rules correctly or not, whether they would catch it.
They would
So,
have to comply with whatever code was applicable at the time.
Yeah.
They were making that change.
And normally that would be a due diligence. They come talk to us before they ever buy the building.
Yeah.
Because they need to know that it's feasible before they even invest in purchasing that. I
Okay.
would agree.
any other?
So what
Councilmember?
you're getting at, that would kind of take care of the issue if there's one thing that they start doing something else.
Even if we changed what we were doing inside of it, we would have to submit. Even if we changed what we were doing in it, we would have to submit for new permits. And to be fair, we have always sprinkled everything that was not this occupancy, office spaces, anything else. We've never fought any of that or done it. But it's just when it's a warehouse that's storing ground calcium carbonate that's used to put fire out, it's kind of silly to sprinkle. Right.
Okay. Is any other comments or questions?
Okay, Pete, number 2.
What's that?
Nope.
Nothing for me?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to workshop item I, Woodland 2023-005, multifamily zoning, text amendment request review.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, before we move on to that one, I think there is a second part of that retooling our code batch.
Did I miss one?
So this one is a little longer, but I'll try and make it quicker because some of them are super easy. So
Okay.
yep,
This is still on action item or workshop item H?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
So the retooling our code batch, this retooling our code is simply our effort to try and continue to make small code changes in our code, corrections while we're in there messing around for some other reason. I try and fix as many of the little things that are on my list as possible. So the first one is, for example, in Title 1, it says that we will post notice in the Old National Bank. The Old National Bank no longer exists. We currently do postings at the post office and City Hall, and the third location where we post is the Woodland Police Department in the lobby. So we are replacing the Old National Bank, which no longer exists, with the police station, the police department lobby. The second code change, so I'll go through some of these and then I'll take a break and see if you have any questions about the previous ones. So the second example is in Title 2. The City Council is listed as holding all council meetings in the council chambers at 100 Davidson. and we haven't done that for like over a decade or so, or decade or more. So
Nice.
we're actually changing that to be 200 East Scott Avenue, which is where we currently are, where we've had the meetings. So another simple fix. Next one. So we received a request to update our nuisance ordinance because our nuisance definition does not include breeding for mosquitoes. And while looking at this, our code section is really, what defines a nuisance is really kind of a joke. And so what we proposed and what the Planning Commission recommended is that we use the Cowlitz County definition for nuisances, because it's actually more comprehensive and more complete than ours. So this is simply a cut and paste from Cowlitz County Code, and it does include language for mosquitoes. So any questions about that one? That one's kind of still minor, but it's relatively more than just a typo correction. Okay, so the next one is section 1056.045, and we are looking at adding a parking at restricted curb safety zone, and the language in the ordinance would proposes that the city designation of safety zones, that the police department is authorized to cite and tow vehicles that are painted, that are parked at the yellow curb zones in the city. Currently, there's no code that would prevent somebody from parking in front of hydrants or blocking sight distance at
So
corners.
that is in the yellow striped areas that you have painted?
That is correct. So
Okay.
they're painted all over town at various
Right.
locations. There's just no justification for somebody who violates that.
Right.
Okay, so the next one, I'm sorry, I must have given you the wrong one. It's out of order. So I'll go by this one. So sections 5 through 11 of the ordinance, or maybe I just printed out the wrong one. Sorry about that. Okay, so Title 16 is our subdivision ordinance, and there's language in there that refers to a massive amount, I want to say 11 or 13 copies of paper for every application that comes in for a subdivision, and we used to take those and rubber band them and route them to all the different reviewers, and we are currently using electronic copies. So while we're in here, I figured I'd all that needless paper waste since we take it in PDF format. We also removed the requirement for Mylar. So if you're familiar with what Mylar, old subdivision plats, it's a type of plastic that is resistant to cracking and breaking down. And you would print them with India ink, which is a very specific type of ink that wouldn't change color or degrade over time. And so those are just stuff that's in our code that should be easy to fix. We also clarify the applicability section and clarification that the community development director now processes subdivision permits. Back before the community development department existed, that was the responsibility of the public works director. And as you know, Tracy is busy enough as it is without asking her to do my job at the same time. So we might as well correct that while we're here. Any questions about that one? Those are relatively housekeeping corrections. Okay, so in section 12 of the ordinance, I am requesting that we add ADA ramps, that they be allowed in setbacks in the low-density residential districts. Specifically, I'm asking that you add language for number 6, which would allow ADA ramps on existing residences in our low-density neighborhoods, essentially our single-family homes, that in a front, side, or rear yard, when you need an ADA ramp so that senior citizens or people in wheelchairs can actually get in and out of the house, that ramp has occasion where it will stretch out to the sidewalk or to the driveway, but it can't be done without going into the setbacks. So this language would allow for ADA ramps to be added to any single family home in the city, even if it's in a setback, because sometimes the laws of mathematics and slopes and construction standards require that it be in the front yard setback. The alternative would be I could require everybody who wants to put an ADA ramp to do a variance from the setback, but it's not worth the effort, and given the circumstances and the aging population, it makes sense for us to just recognize that they should be accommodated without having to go through a permitting process, because the permitting process would often cost more than the actual ramp construction itself. Okay, so while we're in there fixing that, I notice in reading the code, the exact same code section, it says, it cross-references section K, and it actually should say cross-reference section J. So again, this is another simple code correction. It was a typo, not necessarily a code change. So, so if you have any questions about that, you can come see me when the ordinance comes to you at the next hearing. Next slide. Oh, and I'm sorry. The Planning Commission recommended that the council accept and approve these code amendments as proposed.
You said accept, I said reject.
Yes, yeah, I apologize for that. Did we maybe slip presentations?
Travis, your presentation is not, it's totally different.
What's it?
You can follow along and you can find it in here, but you put in a different presentation.
Okay.
And it does say accept, so.
Okay. Oh, okay, so that's what it is. So this shows you what I was talking about before. It says K, but it really should say J, and it's a big paragraph, and there's no change in the content by making that spelling correction. Next slide, Pete. Oh, okay, so there might be a couple more stuff. Oh yes, this is a big section. So fences in street side yards and reverse lots. This came to you, there was a lady who had come to you several months ago, and she is on South Pekin, and she has a gang mailbox, which is kind of the neighborhood mailbox design, right outside her back window, and she has a service dog for her husband, and the gang mailbox means they have no privacy in their back window, no privacy in their yard, and they had talked about their dog somebody was trying to lure their dog and steal their dog out of the backyard. So what they asked is they should be allowed to have taller fences on the backyard. And when she came to talk to me, I said, yeah, the code doesn't allow that. So this would allow for some circumstances when taller fences would be allowed. So I've got some photos here so you understand what implications this has. Next slide, Pete. So we've identified specific places where taller fences make sense around the city. They are State Route 503, 5th Avenue, south of Davidson, Pekin, South Pekin from 5th Street south, North Gorig, East Scott, a couple places, Hillshire, Insel, and Gun Club. So the photos will make a little more sense. So the next slide, Pete. This is an example of State Route 503 where a rear yard has a 6-foot fence. They shouldn't. As a matter of fact, by code, they're not allowed to have this. But the reality is, if you have a backyard that faces State Route 503, the 6-foot fence is really necessary for your sanity if you ever expect to get any sleep. But you see how there's a mix. The house on the right, that's their front yard, so they wouldn't be allowed to put in a 6-foot fence, but the rear yard is allowed to put in a 6-foot fence. Next slide. Another example where there's already a 6-foot fence where it shouldn't be allowed, but the reality is it's pretty standard around the city. Next slide. This is the corner of Gun Club, and if you ever wondered why that cinder block wall goes from 3 feet to 6 feet, it's because they actually followed our code. You can't put in a 3-foot fence along the fence line or along State Route 503 but you could on this side because that's technically a side yard instead of a rear yard. So that's kind of the funky stuff that you see when people actually make an effort to follow the code. Next slide. This is farther up Gun Club, and I included this because none of these properties would be allowed to have a 6-foot fence even under the changed code, because these are all front yards. And the idea of having shorter 3-foot, or you can see through the fence, is you have more friendly open neighborhoods, and it's better for crime prevention when you actually have visibility, which is true in front yards, but backyards are really more for privacy than they are for setting character of the neighborhood. Next slide. So this is the site that we were specifically talking about. The lady is the gang mailbox. You see it on the right, and she installed a 6-foot fence for her family, and this would be permitted under the code, and it would allow them the privacy. You can see in the background their windows, kind of how visible their lot is, because there really is no landscaping in it. But they still have a clear front yard, and they still have clear sight distance at the corner, so that people coming around that intersection can still turn without having blocked sight distance. Next. This one is actually just right out across the street. It's another great example of your front yard where you would have visibly open 3-foot fence that's clearly visible, and it sets a good tone for the neighborhood. But their backyard off to the left, 6-foot privacy fence. So that would be consistent with the code change that we're proposing. There's a couple more examples of this. This one's directly right outside the window. You ever wonder why they have that funky setup? Technically, it's a 3-foot fence in the sight distance, but they're making do with as best they can to get a little privacy in their backyard, since everybody in town drives by them. Next one. This one is directly across the street right outside our front door. It's another example of a 6-foot transition to a 3-foot. A strict application of the code would make this 3 feet the entire length, but the practical reality is there's enough of these around town that we really should change the code to fit reality rather than trying to enforce the code on reality. Next one. And this is Insel, so I think this is the last picture. It's another example of, these are all backyards, and the privacy 6-foot fence makes sense. It may not be the most attractive way to do this, but the reality is, with street trees, the planting strip, and people's privacy, it makes more sense for us to allow 6-foot fences in rear yards than to try and enforce it. Now, this is an example of another way to do it, and we encourage, we're dealing with this up behind the middle school. We're encouraging developers to do a retaining wall and a shorter fence on top of it, but it's another example of, if you look at the blue house on the right, it actually has a 6-foot fence in the front yard. That's the street side yard, and so that wood fence in the background would be permitted under the code change, even though it technically is illegal right now. But you look at the topography change, that same house, you can see like 2 feet of their 3 or 4 foot railing sticking up over what is a 6-foot fence. So the reality is 6-foot fences are a reality in our community as it is. So I don't particularly want to do code enforcement on all of them, so it would be easier to change the code. Any questions about that one in particular?
So like the one across the street that has the white, to kind of make it a 6-foot without it being 6 foot, they could technically, with the new code, go all the way to 6 feet.
Yes.
And make it completely private.
As long as they're not blocking sight distance, and I think they would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, they could technically fill that in. And
You just, excuse me, just touched on it for a second, but what if, I totally agree. People should be able to do, if they're spending all this money on their property, I totally agree. They should be able to do what they want. As long as at some of those intersections, you mentioned sight distance, that they're not blocking and making the intersections not safe, and they put a big old fence you gotta get halfway out into the intersection to see if anybody's coming. So that's all being taken into account?
Yes, so that's written into the code. And so the first example I showed you of the 3-foot cinder block wall that transitions to 6, unfortunately, that's like the one example where they would have to continue to leave the cinder block wall there. But that's not a best example because they have arborvitaes that are like 30 feet tall.
Right.
So the arborvitaes block your sight distance, but it's not the fence. And I can't theoretically force them to get a permit for their arborvitae, so.
Any other questions or comments? We kind of jumped ahead, so.
Oh, and so there are a couple more changes before we move to the public comment. Is
Okay.
that what? Okay. So Title 17, which is the zoning section, there's a couple small ones. First of all, it says in WMC, or it says an WMC 1736-130, and it should say and instead of, so we added a D. There's also a case where there's missing the word in, and that is section 1744-240. So I will add the word in, and the example is down below. What it reads currently is development listed WMC 1444, and what it should say is development listed in WMC 1444. And next slide, Pete. That's it. Okay. So that was the last code changes.
Okay. We'll take public comment on the changes that we were talking about. Okay. You come up and state your name or not.
Yes, this is Donna Butler. So I would like to suggest that you do not change the nuisance code. The existing code, it says right down here on finding one, the current code section for the designation of nuisance is adequate. So it is adequate. There's some concerns in these changes though. And one, the city is different than the county. And they've just taken the counties and they're applying it to the city. And we have different issues here. The county has bigger issues, different and bigger issues than we do. One of the issues here on the change they want to make is that all property owners have the right to the full use and enjoyment of their property. I think it's sufficient just to say property owners have the right to the use. They don't need to have full use in there. And one of my concerns is, or I guess my only concern, is there's a piece of property that's residential and it has a large shop on it. And if that owner was going to use his shop to the full use, it's in a residential zone, but he's living there, I mean, he's not living there, but he's operating a business. He has no business license, but he's operating a business here in the city. If he was going to fully use that shop, it has an overhead crane. He could do, industrial manufacturing in that shop. It was used to refurbish steam engines. So it has really heavy equipment. So to say that you get to use full use, he could come back and say, look what I have on my property. I should be able to, it says right here, I have full use to it, but it's not in compliance with the code. So there's a little problem in the wording here. I mean, to me, because it needs to be at least added on there that it's in compliance with the zoning code. But I think the whole thing needs to be scratched. Another thing that's a concern is it says that in number 4 that the findings of why you would want this is the inclusion of this language will make it easier for the district to obtain permission to enter property. And that's a little red flag for me. We shouldn't be passing laws to erode personal property rights. That's happening a lot. And so it's just one way they're going to use, it could be used to get onto someone's property to say, oh, we're mosquito control. Out in the county, that might be bigger, but I think in the city we have other things and ways that they're taking care of mosquito. I mean, if it comes up, I'm not sure what that is. So anyway, I don't think this is a minor change. The original deals with, for nuisances, accumulation of junk, debris, manure, rubbish. None of those things are mentioned in the this revised code. It just mentions vehicle, junk vehicles, abandoned vehicles, automobile hulks. It's all about automobiles on the property being a nuisance, but not some of these other things. And I don't know if you've ever been out walking and you pass by somebody's house and it smells like manure. They're not taking care of their pets' manure and it's kind of very offensive. So anyway, I think the first language covers more nuisance for the city than what the retooling is. So I don't think you're doing anything tonight. It's just a workshop, but you might consider that to kind of look that over. Might need to redo the original that we have or the existing. I don't really understand it, but it says that they wouldn't allow trees higher than 2 feet on personal property. Well, we're Tree City, USA. I hope we can have trees that are higher than 2 feet. So anyway, I just would like you to give a little more consideration to this nuisance. I think those were some important points for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Butler. Mr. Goddard, does anybody from the lobby have anything further to add for public comments? Seeing none. Anybody online have anything further for workshop H for public comments? Seeing none. Any council members have anything further to add?
I think
Councilmember
I agree.
Alderman?
I think we need to take a deeper look at this, because the county is, if you really look into this, we could be talking about times of noise differ from the county to the city. There could be a lot more differences than we're aware of. So I think we should really take a little deeper look into this.
I agree. You brought up some good points. Is that something we can look at to kind of reword that a little bit, Mr. Goddard?
Yep.
Just make it a little bit more thorough from what Ms. Butler was talking about.
So when that ordinance comes before you, I can have specific slides, what the current language says and what the proposed language says, so you can compare them side to side.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay. Move on to workshop I. Woodland 2023-005 multifamily zoning text amendment request review.
Thank you. So for the record, the applicant is here tonight, and they will want to make a presentation after me. But I'll cover it really quickly, just so you can see what the Planning Commission saw in the Planning Commission's recommendation. So specifically, what they are asking for is in the zoning code, section 1720.020, which is our permitted principal use section. And the current code is on top. It says one single-family dwelling on each building site, and the request is that it should say one single family detached dwelling on each lot, because technically multifamily is on a building site, but if you're building single family homes, it's one per lot. So technically our code does kind of have some outdated language on it, simply because if you're building an apartment complex, you're going to have one lot with multiple building sites or building footprints on it. Whereas if you're building a single family home, it's a lot. It's not a building site. So it's not quite the same thing. Second, they are asking that section 17.20.020, which is currently titled Standards for Townhouses on Individually Owned Lots. So for example, the Bird Homes, River Rock, those are individual townhomes on individual lots. So one big building, multiple units, one with lot lines that go down the building at the wall lines. So what they're requesting is that really the code should say standards for townhomes and single family homes on individual lots. And the implications are why in a second here. So the next slide. It talks about the minimum lot size in square feet should be from 1900 to 1600, and a lot width of 24 feet to 20 feet. So again, going back to the bird homes, the River Rock as an example, those are individual lots that can be as small as 1900 square feet, but in the decades since the code was adopted, current building practice is the standard units are up to 1600 square foot and 20 lot width of 20 feet is more of the standard. There's a lot of stock and options, architectural designs that are available. You don't have to have 24 feet. The standard actually is more common to be 20. So it's cheaper to, or it's easier for developers to have 20-foot wide lots than it is 24-foot lots. Now, this applicant in this case isn't proposing 20-foot lots. They're just saying, while we're in here fixing the code, it's realistic that we should make it look a little more like the communities around us. So the next code section is they're recommending that minimum front yard setbacks for buildings should be 10 feet, not 15 from the property line. But the minimum front yard setbacks for garages would be 20 feet. And this is kind of a new trend in housing, that instead of having the big garage doors sticking out to the street, what you have is some kind of living space, an entry door, some kind of front room that is closer to the sidewalk, and the garage is now de-accentuated by moving it back from the property line. So what this means is we are encouraging or trying to get developers to build homes where the house is closer to the sidewalk and you still have 2 parking spaces in the garage and then 2 parking spaces in the garage. So you continue to maintain 4 on-site parking spaces, but the house can get a little bigger because it accentuates the front of the house more. Next section. So this is again minimum setbacks. So the rear yard setback shall be 10 feet, provided that parking is not within the rear yard. And the PC actually recommends adding that the rear setback can be 0 if it's abutting an alley. So if you go down by City Hall, there are some alleys there. Traditionally, if you have an alley, you would build your garage right on the alley so that you can get, since the front of the houses don't have driveways, your alley would service your driveway and your garage would traditionally be in the back of the house. So they're recommending that they've asked for 10, but really we should add a caveat that reduces it if a developer is going to do an alley design. Next one. So these are side yards. They're suggesting that the reduced setback for side yards, and the minimum side yard setbacks for detached single-family homes shall be 5 feet or 10 feet from street side yards. So that's specifically why they're asking for section 080 to include not only townhomes on single lots, but houses on single lots. And then the last one, I believe this is the last one, that the Planning Commission recommended that the minimum lot area be changed from a minimum of 7,500 to a maximum of 7,500 per lot. And the reason why that's there is our single-family zones have minimum lot sizes of 6,000 square feet up to 12,000 square feet, and our multifamily zone, so at 7,500 square feet, you would get about 5.6 units per acre. But our multifamily zone specifically says we are targeting densities of 25 to 35 units per acre. So if you get apartments, you can get up to 25 or 35 units per acre. But if you're doing a subdivision, you can't even get 6 units per acre. So theoretically, the maximum lot size ensures, why are we asking for 1,900 square foot minimums when the minimum lot size is 7,500? So you would never get a lot that's smaller than 7,500. That makes no sense. So they're suggesting that that lot be changed, or that lot area be changed. So one more, Pete. I think is that it? That's the last one. Yep. So the applicant is here. If you have any questions about their proposal and why they're suggesting the changes that they are.
Do we want to do public comments first before we discuss? Consensus?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Take public comments from the lobby regarding workshop item I. If you would come up and state your name. If you want to. You don't have to.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Steve Marash. I'm an attorney with the Landerholm Law Firm in Vancouver, 805 Broadway, Suite 1000, 98660. And I apologize, we only have 3 sets of these, so
That's okay.
each one has, I think, 4 different renderings. I represent the property owner that's the applicant that's seeking this code change. And what I've just distributed is some renderings of dwellings. We're working with a national builder, and they've provided these as examples of what they might produce were the code change to be approved, and were they to go under contract with our property. Currently, there's no binding contract has been entered yet, but we're in talks with national builders. I'd like to take a step back and talk about the property itself. It's approximately 25 acres. It's located between Gun Club Road and Insel Road on the old Lewis River Highway. I'm sure you've probably all driven by it. We've gotten approval for a 252-unit apartment complex for the property that was just approved last summer by the city's hearings examiner. The property's owned HDR. At the hearing, there was a lot of concern from the neighborhood about impacts, transportation, where people are going to park, is it safe to go across Lewis River Road for pedestrians, and that type of issue. And so we've got the approval for the apartment complex that we could move forward with that tomorrow if we wanted to, but we thought that this proposal for small single-family dwellings might be more appealable to the community and to the neighborhood, would be less impact for traffic. It also would potentially provide an opportunity for people to purchase houses with the median price of houses these days. A lot of people are priced out of the market. These houses are somewhat smaller than your typical house, and the current price point from our national builder is just under $400,000, which is a lot more affordable than maybe something a little larger. These houses are approximately 1,350 square feet with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So, I mean, they're reasonable sized. Townhomes are another option. Townhomes, the difference between these and a townhome is basically a townhome that you're going to have, party walls on the sides, not freestanding. And so that would, reduce the land needed even further, because with single family, you need a 5-foot setback for fire on each side, so there's 10 feet between the buildings. If you do townhomes, that squishes the buildings together so you can have even narrower lots, which is why we propose the, it's not, the slide's not up there right now, but 20-foot minimum lot width, because the current industry standard for townhomes is 20 feet wide. And so a 20-foot wide lot would perfectly fit the 20-foot wide townhome. The houses you're looking at in these renderings, these are 20-foot wide houses. They're single-family detached, and so those would actually be 30-foot wide lots, because they need a 5-foot setback on each side. So we submitted this application. It was prepared by our engineer to change the text to allow us to come in with a subsequent application for single-family dwelling. I wanted to thank Mr. Goddard for his thorough review. I think he, in his staff report, made some recommended changes to our proposed text amendment, and I think his changes are very good, and so we agree with staff's proposal. We also agree generally with the Planning Commission proposal, and wanted to thank the Planning Commission as well, because they did some good work. But I did want to point out there was the slide we were looking at a second ago where they changed the maximum or the minimum lot size of 7,500 feet to a maximum, you know, that would work for our proposed development, and it would work for us in our apartment if we went that way, because that's already approved. But if you put a maximum 7,500 square foot lot size in the HDR zone, that's going to make it very difficult for anyone in the future to come forward with an apartment project, because an apartment building is going to need a bigger lot than 7,500 square feet. So I think I might suggest that instead of making it a maximum, just deleting that requirement entirely and leave lot size to be based on the density requirements, which I think is what staff originally proposed. Either that, or where you say maximum 7,500, maybe put, you know, for single-family detached or something to that effect, so that you're not precluding somebody from coming in with a fourplex or a sixplex or an apartment building where they need a slightly bigger piece of land because they're putting multiple units on the one land. So I think that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions. Well, I mean, I guess, I'm sorry, it's your job.
Councilmember Dowdy.
With this new plan, how many homes do you hope to build if you get approved?
Well, we haven't, you know, designed a project yet, you know, so I'd have to crunch the math as far as, I mean, it's 25 acres, and, you know, if we're talking 1,600 square foot lots, but then we have to do infrastructure and whatnot,
Probably between 85 and 90.
Okay,
Yeah.
so instead of
85 to 90,
252
yeah.
apartments, about 85 or 90 homes?
Yeah.
Okay,
In that range.
okay, perfect.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll sit down and see if anyone else.
I think I would just had a comment. So this is the field across from Gun Club.
Yes.
So these houses, these designs are very similar in size to the houses in that community on the corner, where they're very. No, when you, yeah, whatever they are, they're kind of behind that rock face wall on the corner of Gun Club and Lewis River Road. So they are very similar to this. They are very, very small and up, right?
They're not townhomes, though.
No,
single family.
they're just very tiny houses. I mean, I grew up in a ranch-style house in this neighborhood, and so for me to go in one, they're very small. So like if you're a young couple and it's a starter home, I could see this, like that would make sense. And across from the neighborhood I work in, Salmon Creek, they just did a development similar to these designs. I'm sorry. I'll get like this. So these, what I was saying is that these houses are very similar to the houses already in existence across the street on the corner of Gun Club. That's the type of sized houses, if I am correct. That's what they appear to be.
I believe that is probably correct. I haven't researched those houses to know exactly what size they are, so.
If you drew,
But I
if you
would
drove
guess that's
right
probably.
through the neighborhood,
yeah.
you'd see it.
And we're not asking for a whole, you know, lot of code change. The main thing we want is, you know, slightly smaller setbacks and, you know, 1,600 square foot minimum lot size instead of 1,900. Because, I mean, if we're going to do this type of development instead of the apartments, we need to make sure it pencils. And so to do that, we need to be able to fit just a few more maybe than what they fit in that other development on the same piece of property.
So I think, so I have lived across from that field my entire life, almost, right? So it's been a field. And I always knew somebody would come along with $1 million in dirt and get it up high enough to build houses, right? And I totally understand the concept of maximizing your profit on cramming as many things in there as you can, and I followed along with the apartment complex design. And Mr. Goddard knows his department is not my strong suit. I'm not a fan of people trying to jam as many things into a space as humanly possible, because I grew up with a yard and these kids don't have yards. So then Now we have to build a park in the neighborhood because they can't play in their own yard because it's barely big enough to own a mower, right? And I know you're the attorney just talking about zoning, but you're here in front of me
That's fine,
and
yeah.
and so I just, but I wanted to just kind of impart that because you may have heard there was a lot of feedback regarding that project, and you heard people come in and talk. But I actually live in the neighborhood across from it, and my neighbors had their own conversations about what that would look like, you know, because our houses are 50 years old and we have yards and stuff, so I just kind of wanted to whip that out. I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure you understood that if you drove or your or whoever you work for drives around across the way, you literally can reach out those windows and touch the neighbor. And I don't think, I get the concept behind it. I just, for our community, I don't think it's really the best building model, I guess. If we're gonna say, if we want it to kind of fit in with the existing neighborhood, jamming as many houses in, but I'm also not a fan of people saying we want everybody to have half acre or acre lots, because now you've just priced young couples out of the market. You know, these are cute little starter homes. I would live in one of these, because like I'm old now and my kids are gone, but
Sure. And
anywho.
And I guess my response to that would be, you know, it's all about price point, you know, versus land cost and construction cost. When a national builder's looking at, you know, here's what they're gonna charge, they're looking at their construction costs, but they're also looking at their land costs. So, you know, if the minimum lot size is 1,900 feet instead of 1,600 feet, that's about a 25% increase in the land required, which means a 20 to 25% reduction in the number of units you're going to get on the land, which means that each individual unit is going to have a 20 to 25% higher land cost, and that's going to factor right into so they will no longer be 400,000. They may not be, you know, they may not be 500,000, but they are probably going to be 450, you know, just by reducing the number of units, and maybe more. I don't know. I don't crunch those kind of numbers, but I mean, it's all a sliding scale versus lot size versus, you know, cost at the end of the day to the consumer. So I know what they're trying to do is hit a price point that's right, you know, at that 400,000 mark.
Gotcha.
Councilmember Alderman?
I think we ought to look at the fact that when they submitted when I became part of the council, that was the big uproar, was the apartment complex. That's all I heard about for weeks. People completely throwing a Watusi about this gigantic apartment complex. I think since the developers are willing to adjust and compromise a little bit, that it's something we should look at. If they're willing to compromise, that maybe the city should compromise with them to help them out a little bit, because it is helping to ease some of the concerns that at least I heard from the citizens. And I like the fact, the price point of these two. I like the affordability of it, because it's hard to find a place, especially new homes, especially for young people starting out, that's going to be able to afford a $600,000 house.
That's already 50 years old.
Right.
Yeah, that's a starter house now here.
And it's the same size as these.
Well, yeah, that's all I have.
I agree with you, Councilmember Alderman. 1,900 or 1,600, 300 square foot is not going to give a yard either way. And 90 homes versus 253 in that area sounds more appealing. So I could see that for that reason, but I do agree larger lots would be better in the long run. But if the alternative is 253 apartments, that might need to compromise here. So I think there definitely needs to be more discussion.
The only thing is if
Councilmember
they're
Rounds.
changing the code, It's not just for this.
Yeah.
It's
For
changing it
everybody.
for everything that's coming in. So
Yeah.
you gotta think of it long and strong and, you know, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm just saying that if you change it, it's for everyone. It's not just for certain people. So.
I agree.
And I think that was my question was for you, Mr. Goddard, was the 7,500, is that for anybody else who decides to build a home in the city limits, that they're narrowed down to that 7,500? Because
So
that
this-
I'm definitely opposed to.
So this is applicable to the medium density and the high density residential. And there's not a significant amount of undeveloped property that is that multifamily zoning. So there's about 5 acres of it behind Belmont RV at the end of Cherry Blossom, between Cherry Blossom and Atlantic. There is approximately 10 water treatment plant by the airport, and it is currently looking at developing townhomes on that property currently. Then there's also one additional parcel, it slips my mind right now, other than the property that they're looking at, that they are approved for apartments, and Oak Village, which is currently approved for apartments. There is no significant amount of property that's larger than an acre. There might be some partial half-acre, three-quarter-acre area lots on, I want to say, Beechwood, that might see infill. But again, the infill that's already occurring on Washington and CC Street is in the low-density residential, and they are allowed smaller lots in the low-density residential than our code currently allows in the high-density and the medium density.
So thinking long-term, like if we were to get more of the bottoms, would this code apply to any of that property in the future?
If it is zoned for medium density or high density, yes, but it would only affect, it wouldn't affect apartment complexes, and it would affect townhomes, but it would only really affect the single-family homes in the multifamily district.
So I guess, okay, so I understand you're saying medium density, high density, but you just said low density is even smaller than this? Is that what you just said as well?
No, well, we have one zone that is smaller than this, but the low-density zone actually has larger lots.
Okay, so some of the bottoms, if it was annexed in, it could be low density and they would still be able to have larger lots.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, that's what, I guess that's my concern, is that looking forward as we hopefully eventually do grow as a city and we do get other areas of the outskirts that we may get, that we're not restricting ourselves to something that is so small that we turn away, or we're adding too much building, I guess would be my concern. And then also my other question was this, if we swapped from the apartments to this, does it affect the park that's over there at all?
It does not. As a matter of fact, part of our discussion with them is they're looking at doing a traditional subdivision design, and they would actually have excess property that they would like to talk to the city about dedicating, so we could actually develop a park, and that would offset their impacts by providing a park opportunity.
Anybody have anything further for Mr. Marash? Nope.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Is there anybody else in the lobby that would like to speak regarding this? Come up. Anybody can come up and just state your name if you would like.
Todd Deinhardt. So, I guess, I mean, I can't address him, obviously, inside. I could address outside. My thought process for everyone to think about here is when we talk about the 300 square feet, the 1,600 versus the 1,900, it's roughly 1,500 square feet. If you do 15% reduction, you know, you're talking, instead of 90 homes, you're talking, you know, closer to 75. So there is a 15 less homes that would be here in Woodland by not approving something like this. And then when we talk about the cost, if you look at the cost, based on this $400,000, 1,350 square feet is, roughly $300 a square foot. Then if you look at the value of the land versus the house price, and he threw out the 460 price range, 450 to 460. If you look at the land, that extra 15% of having reduced houses, it would cost another 20 to 25,000. So I think that from a city standpoint, going down this slippery slope and allowing 1,600 square foot lots is kind of something that I'm not hugely in favor of and would hope that we would consider it.
Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. Is there anybody else in? Yeah.
Okay, I agree with what Todd said, but when you're thinking about 20-foot lot, my living room is 20 foot. And please, council members, go down Lewis River, turn on Gun Club, and the first left, go into those houses. If a fire engine needed to go down there, and the cars are on the side of the road, it wouldn't be able to make it in there. I mean, and I'm not. Why does Woodland have to be just like? Why can't we keep our kind of small community? That's what we've been here over 40 years, and I think, or even more. I don't know. But we came here because out of Longview, and I don't know. I would just, I'm not for that, and I don't know where all the water is going to go when we have our next 100-year flood, because that field was underwater. And Gun Club Road, Insel Road, Madrona Road, we were all, we had water in our houses, and we're in that flood zone. So in our garage we had 6 inches, and we're way up there. So please, just do your homework, and this small lots it's ridiculous. So I'm not for it.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Ms. Butler.
Yes, in the last council meeting, we had several come up and speak, talking about our town and how they like it the way it is. And I don't know if you watch Rod on the Road with KGW News, but recently he did a little tour of Kalama, small town charm. And he said people that grow up in a small community want to keep it that way. And it's an attraction for other people to come and visit it because it's a small town, it's a small community. So when people want to say growth's inevitable, I would disagree. It's a choice. You get to choose if you want, how much you want it to grow. And the communities around us that have room for growth have grown a lot. Ridgefield is just at La Center, driving through there. It's just growing, expanding out in their fields. And we do have the bottoms, but that has been noted. It is the richest agricultural soil on the West Coast. And that's a consideration, that it be kept for growing. And that's what Woodland's been known for a lot with what we have down there. So, and I appreciate what Carol pointed out is very important, that we have to be careful. It's prudence to be careful when making policy changes for unintended consequences. And that's, I think, what she was thinking of. If you're making it for the whole city wide, if this development needs it for whatever, that's one thing, but to make it for the whole city.
I have to step away. My wife needs me home right now, so
Okay.
I gotta go.
Anyway, I appreciated Carol's thought, just taking note that this is for the whole city, and it could be per development, what's best for each of the different developments. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to that? Okay. Well, it looks like, I think that's the last thing we had on our workshop, so it is 9:15, we'll go out of workshop and back into the regular session. And we're at that time of the meeting.
Motion to end meeting?
All in favor?
Aye.
I.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Chief Kelly, Gun Club Road, there's a gal over at